guys, and welcome to Tory Bash Takeover. Today we're going to have a really interesting and fun topic to discuss because it's quite a silly mod, and people don't really take it seriously. And I guess they really shouldn't, so don't really take this video too seriously because it's just going to be for a lot of fun. What are we playing? Jousting Fixed. The best mod in the world for farmers. No, but seriously, Jousting Fixed, for those of you who don't know, is a public mod that's commonly played where two players are thrown at one another at high speeds. The one who collides with the other one person better and DQs him wins. Almost never do you win solely by points unless 0 DMs occur. And I'm going to go into how exactly to play Jousting. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load a Lewis script, and I'm going to give you links to the description down below of where you can download this Lewis script because it is incredibly useful. This is the move memory Lewis script. It's for you to remember openers and moves so that you don't have to constantly remember hundreds of moves. So I'm going to open mine up, and I have a couple different jousting moves. Why? Mainly because I don't want to remember jousting moves. It's okay to remember whooshing moves for me, and I don't really use openers in any other move. Except for judo, which I have 2 openers for. But most of the time, I don't want to really remember them. So one of the advantages to that is if I'm in a low reaction time setting, I don't really mind because it only takes me about a second to load an opener. Additionally, it means I can hit the spacebar immediately, which means nobody knows how complicated my move is based off of my reaction time, and I am going to go into how that's useful in just a moment. So let's talk about the dynamics of of jousting. One of the most common openers in jousting is, of course, the joust ball. The joust ball is really known for limiting the amount of space where you can physically get hurt. It is almost entirely a matter of being above where the legs hit in order to win against a joust ball. Just simply extending your knees out of it and raising your shoulders, and you are ripping that person to pieces. It counters. So let me tell you the pros and cons to joust ball. The joust ball, for the most part, typically counters flip openers, like this one, where you flip up into the air, if the player knows what he's doing. If he's not, he'll lose because he'll DQ. Additionally, the joust ball will typically beat any defensive opener outside of jumping to the air and any player who doesn't have any opener at all. So if anyone's just clicking random joints and they're in this position and they just want to mess around and you are using the joust ball, almost always you are in 1,000% better position and you will win. But those are the pros to joust ball. What about the cons? So you go into joust ball position. The one surefire way to counter a joust ball is jumping into the air. And you don't want to half-arse this, alright? You don't want to just do that, because if this happens, you're screwed. You can see right now, you're screwed. That's not a good position. What you want to do is jump even higher. So we're going to try jumping higher this time. We are going to jump as high as I want. And oh, well, I'm sorry, I grabbed there, so you're not actually seeing the exact opener, but you'll notice that I can grab him and win like that, or just go for the simple points. Either way, I typically recommend grabbing. You'll win more that way. So jumping up in the air is really, really, really recommended if you think someone is going to pull a joust ball. The easiest way you can see a joust ball is if someone's not using Move Saver and they space relatively quickly. Alright, now the second opener I'm going to use is called flip jumping. Flip jumping can be this move, or this move, or this move. You see them very commonly. You flip up in the air and a leg's coming at you. and that is typically no good for them. But they're not counterless, and even though they're very complex, it's very easy to beat a flip joust move. And what you're going to want to do is, well, first let me actually, before I tell you about the counters, I'm going to tell you about what the pros to a flip joust are. The pro to a flip joust is that they break defensive openings right out the window. So if they just see you do a joust ball, and they think, I'm going to see another joust ball, so I'm going to jump in the air, and I am going to counter a joust ball. You will notice he is in the worst position in the world for a flip joust, and that's exactly when you should use flip jousting openers. You should use flip jousting openers when you are pretty sure your opponent is playing defensive and or trying to counter a joust ball, because that is when you will secure the most points and win safely by non-disqualification unless you get the decap or an arm rip. So that's the use of a flip joust. How do you beat a flip joust? Really easy, you use ballsy rush kicks. Alright, first and foremost, being AFK is actually a relatively decent rush kick, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use a move I named the bull joust, which is not made by me. Now you'll see Slycooper uses an opener sort of like this in jousting. It's all about getting those knees high up in the air. So if I'm Uke and I use a flip joust move, you'll notice I am in the prime position to counter the flip jousting procedures. I really, really love getting to see people constantly spamming very complicated moves, like the flip joust moves, that they don't themselves even know how to make, and then something like this crushes them. So always, 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 if you suspect a complicated kick maneuver, go for a bull joust. Whether or not that's that move, or you try to figure something out yourself, go for it. But the main secret is getting those feet up into the air. That is how you can crush how you can crush jump moves. So I've now told you the 3 or 4 basic moves that kind of exist in jousting. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about getting into their heads. The first and foremost is looking at their reaction time. Most players do not play with move save, which means a jousting move that's as simple as a joust ball will only take about 6 to 7 reaction time. A move that's like jumping into the air and or custom moves will typically take about 12 to 13, maybe 14 reaction time. These sort of moves. And a complicated move, such as a flip jousting move, a flip jousting move, typically takes people at least 15 reaction time to input. There's a lot that goes into them, at least at the start, and they are just really complicated procedures. And the people who typically play jousting are not people who are quick button pressers. So if I know for a fact they're not using Move Saver, I really like to absorb the information that they're using from their reaction time to kind of decide what I'm doing. The other thing I do is if someone is constantly joust balling, I'm not going to assume anything other than a joust ball when I play them. If they win 4 games in a row with a joust ball, they will not risk not using a joust ball for the 5th game. So another idea is to kind of play rock, paper, scissors. One common concept, I don't know if this is completely true or not, is if you know someone well, rock, paper, scissors ties 80% of the time. So if you know this person well, and you think, you know what, he's going to rock a joust ball, and he thinks, I'm going to use a defensive opener to beat it, so I will use a bull joust move. What you're effectively doing is reading too much into the game. Now you can try it, but here's the problem. The problem with bull jousting moves, I realize now that I haven't told you the downside to them, is that they lose to nearly every move that isn't a complicated jump move. And they especially lose to the joust ball. It is not a good go if you are using the joust ball against that sort of move. Alright, finally I'm going to talk a little bit about the most common mistakes ever done in jousting games. There is a load of torque going on in your neck when you play jousting and you do your first opener. And what that means is a lot of force is being implied there. And even though there isn't self-damage, it is incredibly, and I'm not doing it right now because I don't want to, or because I actually want to do it, it's not happening. But it is a very, very common problem for people to rip their own heads off in jousting. And of course, because I want it to happen, it's not happening. But it is an incredibly relevant problem most of the time that you decap your own head. Now, why does that happen? It's the applied torque. So when you're improving, make sure there is not too much torque on your neck. If you aren't sure what that takes, just play around with single player. You will figure out sooner or later what it takes to decap your head and what it takes to not decap your head. You'll notice right now I've never decapped my head, and it's because I haven't applied too much torque on my body. And that was just really cool. I think I might actually use that opener. Regardless, don't break off your own head. And if you suspect even for a second that they're going to break off your own head, that the opponent's going to break off their own head, joust ball. Because anyone that breaks their own head gets joust balled, you will lose a hip. This player right here will lose a hip and their head, and more than likely will lose the game if they joust ball, or if they lose their head and you joust ball. And that's simply because of the position you're in once you become relaxed all from your first turn. Which brings me to my last point. Some people really don't know what to do in jousting, and some people will just relax all. You'll know this purely by the reaction time. If they never space, they almost always are AFK and will hurt you very deeply if you use the wrong type of moves. See, I used to streak a lot using a flip joust move, but some people would actually beat me because I would try to use my flip joust move on them and they would win. And that's frustrating as mess because then they come back and they're like, oh wow, I am beating HXCBBQ IMO, I'm just going to save this and win. Of course, I didn't actually bother saving it. But be wary of the AFK, and if you see an AFK, the best move and the safest move is always a joust ball. In fact, almost all of the time, the safest move is a joust ball unless your opponent really knows what he's doing, or if you don't know how to counter a flip kick with a joust ball, which is really simple. You flip kick versus joust ball, you'll see the predicament that they're in, and you want to contract that knee. People think that they should just do the opener the way it was created originally, but they're not adaptive. What you really want to do is widen those legs out. If you're underneath your opponent, widen those legs out, because you do not want to be beating someone and then DQ. And it's easy as that. You just completely mess them up. But make sure you widen those legs. Finally, the biggest reason why people lose in jousting is they don't know something. So let me tell you something that is implied in most jousting players. Sumo is off. That means this wrist joint, that ankle joint, and that ankle joint will DQ if it comes in contact with the ground. Your hands can touch the ground. Your hands can touch the ground. Your feet blocks can touch the ground. Your joints of your hands and knee and feet cannot touch the ground. So anytime you're playing jousting, have that in the back of your head. And when you're trying to perform a comeback in jousting, make sure you're not using contracted wrists. This is a common tactic among players that know how to come back, and what they don't realize is they're more than likely going to shove their contracted joint right into the ground and DQ. So the alternative is to contract your elbow. Get your elbow near the ground instead of your wrist. Extend that elbow and you'll go forward. Alright guys, this is Hacks, or HXCBBQ IMO, teaching you all about jousting. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like my content. If you have any questions about jousting and want to know why you should play it, other than the fact that it's a really great way to get QI and raise your win ratio if you're good at it, or just have a fun time with your friends, then go ahead and send a comment down below. If you have any more questions, comment down below. If you think that there needs to be a second video, because I think this is going to be a one-off, let me know, and let me know specifically what you want me to touch base on in jousting.